primarily women, workers, and immigrants, and residents who are too often left out of political spaces. These residents are also all part of the Somerville Renters Committee, which is a group supported by CAAS that got started in 2021. Members of the Renters Committee are leaders in this community. They volunteer in their kids' schools. They represent the interests of low-income renters on citywide committees, and they lead organizations. So thank you to the Somerville Renters Committee for encouraging us to organize this forum. And if everyone here who's part of the Renters Committee could please stand up, I'd love for us to give them a round of applause. Okay, thank you. So when choosing questions for tonight, we aim to focus on the needs and concerns of low-income residents, residents of color, immigrants, and renters facing displacement from Somerville. Thank you to everyone in the audience who submitted a question for the mayoral candidates. They were very helpful, and some of you will hear your questions being asked tonight. Before we get started, I have a few more appreciations for the groups and individuals who made this event possible. So first of all, thank you to the mayoral candidates, Counselor at Large Willie Burnley Jr. and Counselor at Large Jake Wilson. Next, a quick shout out to my colleagues at CAAS for all your work on this, and to our former colleagues who are here tonight as well, and even volunteering. Thank you. The lights are great. Thank you. I also want to thank our co-sponsoring organizations for promoting tonight's event and for donating tonight's event. We have the Brazilian Women's Group. East Somerville Main Street. Yeah. The Mystic Tenants Association. The Somerville Community Corporation. And the Somerville Community Land Trust. Thank you, co-sponsors. Thank you as well to Susan McHale for your donation for tonight's event for the interpretation. This is a multilingual hybrid event. And perhaps most importantly, I want to thank the Candidates Forum Planning Committee. They have put in a ton of work to organize this forum, collaborating with community partners, designing the flyer, and getting all of you here, both in person and the 50, 70 people we have on Zoom right now. So let's give them a round of applause. The candidates will each have an opportunity to make opening and closing statements. And in between that, we're going to have 11 or 12 questions, depending on the time. We'll have 90 seconds to respond to each question. Most of these questions will be asked by the participants behind me and my colleague in the room. And just so everyone knows, the candidates did not receive these questions in advance. So, thank you for your advice. And then I will conclude the forum with Q&A and invitations for meetings. And I just have a few ground rules for everyone. Candidates, please stay within the given time limits. 90 seconds per question. When the timer has gone off, we'll be playing transition music so that we can move forward. And also, candidates, if you want me to repeat a question that was asked, it's no problem at all. More than happy to do it. Just let me know. So for the candidates, for the questions, and also myself, just a reminder to speak slowly, clearly, and loudly, that we can hear on Zoom, hear in person. And for the audience, both on Zoom and in person, just a reminder that this is a nonpartisan event. So please be respectful and refrain from cheering or jeering or excessive applause for the candidates' responses. We would appreciate that. So with that, let's get started. Let me make sure your mic is good. Thank you. Whoop. That's important. Hold on. Yeah. Okay. Yay! Technology. All right, we're gonna leave this right here. Okay, so we determined the order of speaking by coin flip. So Counselor at Large Willie Burnley Jr. will go first, and then we'll switch back and forth from there in terms of who's going first. And like I said, we're going to start by giving each of you an opportunity to introduce yourself. As part of your opening remarks, we'd love to understand you better as a person and for you to tell us why you decided to run as a voter. I'm going to start a timer here. Pardon me. Oops. Oh dear. Oops. All right. First, Counselor Burnley Jr. There you are. And I'll start it now. You'll speak towards that help. Thank you.
Hello, everybody.
Hi.
Thank you for the call and response. My name is Willie Burnley Jr. I am your at-large city councilor, and I'm running to be the next mayor of Somerville because I believe that we can make our city more affordable, more accountable, and more accessible for everybody. And I come from that issue, not as an abstract issue, not as one of just moral importance, but from a very personal place. As the only renter in this race, and as someone who has been displaced from Somerville once before, I know exactly the kind of stress and terror that members of this community who worry about their ability to stay in this place we all love face every single day. I've lost too many friends each and every year to the rising costs of rent, to the inability to buy a home. And I believe that with the right political leadership, we can do more to keep Somerville economically and culturally diverse. As a resident many years ago, once I came back to Somerville, I organized as a volunteer with CAAS as part of the Emergency Response Network, trying to extend the eviction moratorium and forming what became the basis of the renters organization within CAAS.
Oh my gosh, that was the timer. I'm so sorry that it quacked at you. Whoa. All right, thank you. We're gonna go with that. I did not expect the quacking. Okay.
Wilson. Thrilled to be here with you. I've lived in Somerville since 2004. I have family, we put down roots here, love this place. Last summer I heard the call to run for mayor, and I answered that call. I love that tonight we have to really talk about our campaign's topic, which is housing. The cost of housing continues to skyrocket. It's tearing apart the fabric of our community. It comes up in the conversations that I have on the doors, where I've knocked over 10,000 doors, and out in the community. Everyone says that they love affordable housing. It's easy to talk. We have a comprehensive plan for our campaign to go beyond the platitudes and the aspirational thought. I know firsthand what it takes to build kind of housing. I serve on the Mayoral Advisory Committee. And I know the tools that we use to unlock that project, set to break ground there next month, where we are going to produce the kind of housing we need to see. I'm the only candidate on the stage who has introduced legislation that was passed by the council that has actually created housing in the city. I'm eager to jump in, answer all the questions.
Quick request from the chat from the Zoom. The audio is a little out. So if all the candidates and moderators can just move closer to the owl if possible, and then like try to speak into the owl as much as you can, and then also minimize any like head movement or unnecessary movement, like be natural. But like, it's a lot here when you're close and you're not like moving as much. So I think when you move it closer, it'll be much better here. Thank you. We just want to make sure everyone else is here. Thanks, everyone.
Hey, it's not gonna fire me anymore either, so sorry. All right, so our first real question is gonna be asked by Elizabeth. Right here, talking toward that.
This question is about preventing displacement. We have seen many residents get displaced from Somerville when their building is sold and rents are hiked by hundreds of dollars. We understand you are both in support of laws that put a limit on how high rent can be increased, also known as rent control or rent stabilization. While a lot of work is being done across the state to put rent control on the ballot for 2026, what concrete step you take in the next year to protect these renters for being displaced? Thank you.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Yeah, go first this time. So let me just make sure I've got.
Into the owl.
All right.
All right, thank you, Elizabeth, for that question. Yeah, as you mentioned, legalizing rent control or rent stabilization at the state level is critical in terms of stopping the bleeding that we're seeing. We need a reasonable cap on rent increases. I think the people of Somerville support that overwhelmingly from the conversations I've had. Both of us on stage, as was mentioned, are supporters of that. In the meantime, we need far better renter protections and far better tenant rights education. You know, that's how we accomplish something here meaningful while we're waiting for the rent stabilization that we need. I want to thank the CAAS community organizing and the Office of Housing Stability folks for the work that they do with landlords in these situations when folks are facing displacement. The rental assistance that has happened has been critical. We have to figure out how to continue that. ARPA was big for that. We need to get creative. It was mentioned earlier today that Cambridge has managed to be more creative than we have when it comes to actually taking municipal funds and getting those in the hands of private organizations, private citizens. We need to look into that. Also, I look at some landlords are very good at renting below market. How can we incentivize more of them to do that while we're waiting for the restoration?
I really thought the quacks were done, but I guess not.
People like
You don't like it?
Keep it up.
Okay. Keep it up. All right. Yeah.
Thank you for the question. I'm trying not to move my head too much. This is an incredibly important issue. Yes, we need control, but we need to bring down the cost of housing right now. We need to bring down the cost that tenants pay as a search for housing. It's one of the reasons that the first law I introduced when I was on this, became city councilor, was a tenants know your rights law, in partnership with the Office of Housing Stability. I've actually expanded tenants' rights in the city because I know the struggle that people face when they move into our community and don't know what their landlord can do to them, what is okay, where they can actually speak out for support. I've also worked with my counterparts in Boston and Cambridge who enforce broker fees, which is the practice of tenants paying potentially up to a month's rent to a broker they never hired, simply to move into the front door. It was extortion. It was incredibly immoral, and it is now illegal across the state because of some of the advocacy that we do. As a candidate, I've proposed creating an office of social housing so that we can create permanently affordable housing in the city on municipal land. We need to do everything we possibly can to keep people here and not displaced.
All right. Thank you both. Wonderful. So the next question will be asked by Emily Drayton. I'll just stay here. Stay right there and talk for us out. Great. Hello.
This question is about development and zoning. When we say zoning, we're talking about the limits that the city can put on how, where, and what type of housing is built. One way to prevent displacement from Somerville is through building more units of housing, but we know that corporate investors often focus only on building luxury apartments and condo buildings. What is your vision for development in Somerville? And how would you use zoning to create more affordable units? And specifically, what differentiates you from the other candidate in this regard?
Okay, so you're going to be first this time, and
Thank you for the question. Yeah, this is something that I've certainly thought a lot about as a counselor and as a counselor who has put forward and helped pass multiple zoning changes, including one that brought down the cost of housing by removing unnecessary mandates for construction. We absolutely need to have more changes to our zoning in order to build up the kind of housing that's going to allow us to have economic diversity in this community. We can't become a place where only the wealthy, only people in biotech can afford to move here or stay. And we need to zone in such a way where it isn't only East Somerville or Union Square that is seeing development. We need development as well across the city, such as in West Somerville. That's why I've proposed, as part of this campaign, citywide upzoning, but particularly with a focus on those areas that have really escaped a lot of the development that's been shouldered by the folks in East Somerville and Union Square. It's one of the reasons why I was endorsed by Somerville YIMBY, one of our local housing advocacy organizations, because they know I have a bold vision for ensuring that we have housing that can accommodate everybody in this community, from high income earners to low and middle.
right. Wow, look at that.
Yeah, thanks for asking this question. Yeah, we talked about the citywide zoning. Give me his proposed similar to what Cambridge did next door. I did not support this. I did not support this because I know that doing so would pour gasoline on our business. The low income immigrant households that comprise overwhelmingly, neighborhoods like Somerville would be the first ones to feel the impact because they would bear the brunt of this. By doing so, I stand up for our immigrant community and our most vulnerable residents and our stated values in Somerville. I'm not selling you out for developer interests. Instead, I favor startups, transit stations, where we're currently working on this in the land use committee. It's more bang for the buck. We can build higher, we can build much more of the type of housing we need, and with far less risk of displacement, far less risk to our low income and immigrant community in this city. Through density bonuses and subsidization, I know we can get projects way north of that minimum 20% that's in our inclusionary zone. We've seen that happen in other projects. That's how we can do it, is by focusing on the areas that we most need that housing.
All right, thank you both. The next question will be asked by Maria de Fatima Lacerda.
This is the second question part about increasing the affordable house supply. Somerville is in serious need of true affordable house. What concrete steps will you take to increase the number of accessible units in Somerville for the lowest income renters in the next year? And would you support Somerville building municipally owned social house? And if so, how do you move that forward?
Okay, let me get some.
Yeah, thanks, Fatima. I appreciate this question. This entire city needs to be affordable housing. Now our goal is that we have just 24% affordable. If you know that, we're never gonna hit that number if we're doing just the 20% minimum inclusionary zoning projects. It's never gonna happen. That's why we need more projects like 290 problem, accessible ground and small. That's a project that I'm working on that as part of our Mayoral City Advisory Committee. That's gonna be 319 units of housing, 136 of those. By square footage, the majority of the residential will be affordable. And a lot of these are 2 and 3 bedroom units and offer 30%, 60% very median income. So levels actually attainable. I know the tools that we use to unlock that development. We need to be using those tools elsewhere. Things like UCH tip, things like the direct subsidization of affordable housing trust fund, things like the $2.5 million got created with state grants to make that project happen. We need more 100% affordable housing projects, like what the Somerville Land Trust is just to start with the one here on Central Hill. That's what's going to move the needle in terms of both of us are big believers in social housing. I appreciate that question about social housing. The state created a program last year. It's not quite ready for prime time, but I'll work with my colleague and the Healy administration to make sure that Somerville can be a test case and make social housing happen.
Right.
Thank you, Fatima. As I mentioned before, I'm the only candidate up here who's said that he would establish an office of social housing within my first term as mayor. And I use the model of the Office of Housing Stability to do that. 7 years ago, Joseph Curtatone, everyone knows him, Mayor Joe, created that Office of Housing Stability. And he did so with a single employee, a director level employee, who was able to help build out the infrastructure for that department to help teach the city what we needed to do in order to help renters like myself who are at risk of displacement. We can do that same model with the Office of Social Housing. And it wouldn't be throwing millions of dollars down the hole to say, we're just gonna buy up every building when it comes up. It would be creating in real time a plan with our city staff in order to do that. And we can do that in partnership with organizations like the Somerville Community Land Trust and Justice Start, which are already doing a lot of this work. And I'll note that we are going to need to zone up in areas like West Somerville, which are not near transit stations, which have our most single family housing. We cannot actually get the kind of housing we need across the city if we don't actually have the zoning in the places that aren't near the key stations.
All right, thank you both. Just a quick reminder to please silence your cell phones if you haven't already. I've heard a few dings and I don't want the candidates to be distracted. Another quick reminder to both the candidates to please speak as slowly as possible. I know you don't have much time, but we appreciate that. Thank you. So the next question we asked again by Elizabeth.
Okay. This question is about our existing affordable housing. When it comes to recertification process is very burdensome for many tenants in affordable units in both public and private housing. Tenants can even lose their homes if the recertification is not submitted correctly and on time. How do you leverage your authority as mayor to simplify the recertification process for tenants in affordable units?
Great. Thank you so much. You're right.
Thank you for the question. And I'm going to start by quoting James Baldwin, one of my favorite writers. He once said that anyone who has ever struggled with poverty knows how extremely expensive it is to be poor. And I would just add to that, that it is not only expensive, it is incredibly time intensive to be poor. When we're talking about the recertification process for something like Section 8 vouchers, we're talking about family members, heads of households who have to submit their childcare expenses, their medical expenses, multiple pay stubs. If they're on unemployment, they have to get a letter from their previous employer. We're talking about a massive amount of work just to prove that you do not have enough money to survive in the housing market that we live in. It is unconscionable, it is immoral, and unfortunately, so much of it is controlled by the federal and state governments. Mostly the federal, less so the state. And then now, through some of the programs that have come out of the Office of Housing Stability within the city. We should be using our leverage within the city to first immediately make sure that our own local level process is as streamlined as possible. Some of that work has already happened, from consolidating the affordable housing short list, but there's so much more we can do. And as someone who's worked for both of our senators, I know exactly who we should be talking to.
Thanks so much, Senator. I really appreciate this question. What will I do? I will listen to the folks who are helping folks navigate this process. Office of Housing Stability. I've done that in the past. Last year, a member of OHS came to me at a Slice of the City event and told me about how onerous it is for folks to try to recertify, and specifically called out the low threshold for things like Venmo payments. And making people go explain what all those are. So what did I do? I went and talked to the office to the housing division about this. And it turned out this is a third-party contract doing certification that reaches a standard threshold. Simply asked them to use a higher threshold. The update I got was that they're now doing this, and the process is improved for people. It pays to listen to the people who are out doing the work. I'll be the kind of mayor who does that. We're going to make sure that we are making things so much better for the people who are going through the process. It should not be onerous to certify to stay in affordable housing. We're going to make sure that happens.
All right, thank you both. The next question will be asked by Sam. Sam Garrigan.
In the direction of the owl. Okay. Good evening, everybody. Thank you for being here. Thank you to our candidates. This question is about tenants' rights to safe and healthy housing. A lot of the available lower cost units in Somerville have health and safety code violations. How will you ensure these conditions issues are addressed for renters in both public and private units?
Thanks, Sam. This is one that we get a lot as councils. Yeah, unfortunately, part of having that affordable housing often means putting up with conditions that other people would not put up with. And unfortunately, people are often, vulnerable residents feel like they're not in a position to come to report this or complain about it to a landlord. That's where having exceptional services staffed up and focused on the right things would be hugely helpful. we are in a situation where inspectional services in the city seems to be just overly concerned with things like, drywall screw inspections, as opposed to things people are dying for them to actually come inspect, things like safety, quality of life. And this is one such case where getting the ISD focused on issues that really impact the people of Somerville could pay real dividends. Making sure that they're actually able to come out and look at units. I love the idea of having a required inspection, making sure that these units are up to state sanitary code, and that these are safe, reasonable environments for people to live in. Because if we're not doing that for our vulnerable, we're really failing people who espouse, values of caring about. And that's where I think come up big, and I have big plans to completely reform how ISD works.
Right.
Thank you for the question. I agree with what my colleague said. We need a well-staffed ISD to be doing these inspections to ensure that we are providing our residents with safe and dignified housing. But let's be honest, a lot of this comes down to money. This is the reason so many of these residents are living in squalor, is because of sometimes it's corporate landlords, but sometimes it's some of our own partners who don't have the money for maintenance of buildings. This is where the city needs to be stepping up and using our affordable housing trust more actively so that we can get the money into the places where it can improve people's lives the most. As a counselor, I was on the creative displacement task force, which mainly dealt with trying to serve artists and arts and creative businesses. One of the recommendations that we made that is now law is that we had a 3% tax on short-term rentals like Airbnb. I asked the person how much I was going to bring in every year, and they said probably somewhere around $400,000 a year. 35% of that, based on state law, needs to go into affordable housing. I say we should put at least 50% of it into affordable housing so that we can have better standards of living. And this is why I have more to say, but I'm going to let it go.
All right, thank you both. The next question will be asked by my colleague, Lauren.
This question is about preventing discrimination in housing. We often hear of tenants facing discrimination when looking for a new apartment, especially tenants with Section 8 vouchers and with the school-age children. This disproportionately impacts single parents, women, and people of color. How will you proactively combat housing discrimination and ensure fair housing practices are enforced? Thank you.
Awesome. You go.
Thank you for the question. This is where my experience, I think, really comes into play. Many years ago, I interned at a nonprofit in Washington, D.C. known as the Equal Rights Center. It was a organization that focused on civil rights, primarily ADA violations and fair housing violations all across the country. I would get calls from people struggling in some of the worst conditions that you can imagine. And one of the things I learned how to do while there was a fair housing check, which is how you actually check if housing discrimination is taking place. This is something that we need to be doing in Somerville. And I've asked folks in the city whether the city itself does these checks. The answer is no. We don't do these checks. We get a lot of information. We have laws on the books that tell us how many times per year people make complaints about fair housing violations, but knowing the data is not enough. We need action. We need to actually take steps forward. That's why as mayor, I'm gonna make sure that we build up the capacity to actually do fair housing checks and to hold those landlords accountable who refuse to rent to people who have young children and they know that their apartment is full of lead, who have Section 8 vouchers, who maybe come from a background that they don't like. This is something that is deeply personal to me and my family's history, and I will make sure Somerville does not let it happen.
Yeah, thanks for asking that. It's an issue we heard about the city council call, who talked about her experience around this. And Councilor is 100% correct. That is a big tool that we have at our disposal. It's sort of secret shopper check of this. Because it's very common. What happens is an apartment will be listed when the person fills out, a form expressing interest in it, indicates they have children, selling that apartment is rented. It's not available anymore. And we know what's going on. It has that effect. They don't want to deal with that. And there's discrimination going on. The historical inequities around this, the discrimination, the segregation we've seen in the housing market as a result of it. They're real. We have a fair housing commission. It's on them. They do amazing work. The question is, how can we enhance that fair housing enforcement? And that's where the secret shoppers come into play. To make sure that we can catch the violations in that rental market and make sure that people are held accountable. We find a way, we do checks like that on convenience stores selling cigarettes. We should be doing the same for housing city. And we need to make sure that we bridge cultural and linguistic divides, make sure everyone knows their rights around this and has access to resources, knows how to file a fair housing. That's how we're going to actually stop this practice.
Audio is really good. Thanks for bearing with us, but it's not as good for Jade. It's a little Jade podcast.
Do you want to talk louder? Is that the drain closer to the owl?
Can you talk a little closer to the owl, please?
Even closer to the owl.
We can trade. It's fine with me. Let's try that. Thank you.
Don't try again.
Do we test it? Well, it's better than the second, I think. Am I just not loud as well?
It's been said.
Closer is better. All right. We'll leave it.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. This is a hybrid live event. Appreciate your patience with the tech. All right. So thank you both for your responses. And the next question is by Fatima.
This question is about immigrant rent.
Oh, there we go.
Okay. You hear?
Yeah, start over.
Okay. This question is about immigrant renters. Many immigrants in our city, both with and without paper, are living with the fear of detention, deportation, and separation from their families. Several immigrants' households have already lost their breadwinner to detention or deportation, and we fear that this will continue. How will you ensure these households are able to pay their rent and maintain their housing?
Thank you. Okay, let me start. So much.
Carolina, you're in the English channel right now. Can you go back over to the Spanish channel, please?
Making the interpretation is okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Fatima. Definitely something that we hear a lot about, especially lately. It's really it's infuriating to see the terror the federal government's inflicting on our city, in Somerville in particular, where people are terrified. They're staying home as a result. They're missing out on income. They're unable to pay for the rent as a result. And that's where we need to make sure that the tenant protections we have in effect are actually being honored. rights is hugely important. And that's also where I'll bring up the Office of Housing. I feel it's a love fest tonight for OHS for good reasons. They do amazing work. And making sure that these people are getting connected with OHS and with organizations like CAAS as well, who can step in, who can help perhaps ease things with the landlord and connect them with resources out there. And I mentioned earlier about rental assistance. We're going to need to get creative like we have not before in terms of figuring out how to actually get money to the people who need it, to keep them in their homes so we don't see more displacement, more homelessness in the community, so that people aren't facing the specter of being forced out of their homes on top of everything else they're dealing with right now.
Thank you for that question. It is a question that is both heartbreaking, and just incredibly outrageous that we need to be talking about this in the moment we live in. The ways in which the Trump administration has tried to force our community to bend to its will are outrageous. They've tried to force the city to comply with ICE and cooperate with ICE using federal funds. They've kidnapped and abducted our neighbors off of the streets. And I believe that the mayor's office absolutely needs to be a hub for bringing together the stakeholders who are most connected to our immigrant neighbors in coordinating the kind of strong, direct response necessary to actually get ICE out of our community, to scare them away, to shame them and name them so that they don't come around and attack our children and the folks who are the breadwinners of many households. We have an immigrant legal services fund in the city that is meant to help the folks who are in the court process. I think we need to think about how we can best expand that to provide services and support for folks who are also in that process. We can't just say that we'll help you with the court case. We have to help you live in the community.
Right. Thank you both. This next question will be asked by Maria Estela Calzada in Spanish, and then I will repeat the question in English.
Hola.
Hola.
¿Sí se oye?
Is it? Oh, I think it's. Disculpe.
Hola, hola. Bueno, mi pregunta es, yo llegué aquí cuando tenía 40 años, ya tengo 60. Y veo a hoy la ciudad muy bien, está creciendo muchísimo y está muy bien. Pero, oh sorpresa, ya no hay dónde estacionarse. Las personas que ya estamos sin poder caminar, no hay accesibilidad. Ya necesitamos un medio de transporte personal y no hay dónde estacionarse. Yo vivo en la calle Yale, en Somerville. Es doble sentido, doble estacionamiento. Está la calle esta así chiquita. Y de verdad, ahorita que ustedes están en esta campaña, me gustaría que vieran que no nada más es esa calle, muchas calles de Somerville tienen ese problema, sobre todo para nosotros que ya estamos mayores. El tiempo pasa. No me quedé de 40 años y ya con menos manera de poder caminar. Entonces necesita uno otros accesos y también pues está muy limitado el acceso para las personas discapacitadas. Entonces sí necesitamos que ustedes vean, no nada más ahorita el presente, sino también el futuro. Que ustedes dejen una huella para nosotros que vamos caminando.
Gracias, Estela. Okay, Estela did take the question in a different direction a little bit, so I'm just going to read what we have, but I do want to say that she emphasized the need for more parking for people who are elderly and for people who are disabled. So Obviously, this question is about transportation. Somerville has worked hard to become more bike and pedestrian friendly. However, many residents, including those with long commutes, physically demanding jobs, seniors, and people with disabilities still rely on cars and on public transit. Unfortunately, the Green Line extension is not accessible for many public housing tenants, and working class residents face many challenges like infrequent buses, out of service and delayed subways, sidewalks that are not ADA compliant, limited parking, and congested streets.
So how do you plan to address these inequities?
Thank you for that question, and it's one that I live often, because I mostly walk around the city, and it's a lovely city, but it's very hilly. And if you live near Magoon Square like I do, if you're trying to get to Union Square, you probably have to cross 3 or 4 hills to get there. That's why when I spearheaded our Safe Streets ordinance, which primarily does work to actually create more protected bike lanes, I ensured that it had language in there that said, wherever we put a new bike lane, we have to make sure that we have accessible sidewalks. We have to make sure that we're raising the standards of our crosswalks so they're easier to cross the street. And wherever we do it, it's written in the law, we have to, as much as possible, maintain accessible parking, if not expand it, as long as it is not going to actually make the street more unsafe. This is something that I came to through conversations with many different stakeholders, including the Commission for Persons with Disabilities, multiple main streets, including the East Somerville main streets. And I think it's very important. I will also add that, well, both Councilor Wilson and I partnered trying to get the city to have micro transit routes north to south, because the T will not take the buses and the T will not take you north to south in Somerville, and we can actually have services like that here.
Yeah, thank you for this question. I think it says everything that the T station called East Somerville is not actually in Somerville, it's in Brick Bottom. This neighborhood is circled by T stations, but there aren't actually any in East Somerville. You have Assembly Square to the north, you have Sullivan to the east, you have Union Square to the west, you have East Somerville to the south. So therefore, the bus transit really is important to East Somerville. And those bus routes have been under threat during the MBTA's bus network redesign, and then more recently some changes to the street sauce of the bus line. People rely on rerouting. And so that's why it's really important to make sure that we protect the bus routes that people in Somerville need. It's critical we make sure we get free and reduced T passes into the hands of the people who need them, and then we get bus service increased. I'm really glad to hear the shout out for safe and accessible sidewalks. That needs to happen year round, even after snow events. I have a plan to make sure sidewalks get shoveled in this city, and we don't end up with icy sidewalks weeks at a time in February. We have to increase accessible parking, like my colleague pointed to. We have to make sure the parking we have is, because right now, we're not making the effort to meet those needs for parking around businesses and neighborhoods as well.
Right. Thank you both. This next question will be asked by colleague Maria.
I have this question. Can you hear me? No. This question is about homelessness. There has been a lot of public attention of homelessness in Davis Square this past year, but not on house resident in East Somerville and Forest Park. Permanent supportive housing, which provide both subsidized rent and services to keep people in their homes has been effective nationwide. What will you do to support the emergency and needs of this unhoused Somerville residents?
Okay, great.
Yeah, thank you for this question, and thank you for pointing out that homelessness is not just an issue in fact at Davis Square. I would say East Somerville felt it more acutely in Davis Square, up until probably last summer. It was an issue the city council spent a considerable amount of time on, but now Davis seems to be getting the lion's share of attention. These are different populations, even different substances involved, between the two groups in terms of what's really causing the issues for folks. And so we need to make sure that we're bringing the same attention to East Somerville we're bringing to Davis Square. And that means making sure we have engagement centers in both places. We have to be going to where the problem exists. You know, I love that the city is standing up a warming center again at the edge of the school. It's not really where it's needed geographically. We need to have in both East Somerville and in Davis Square places for people to go to. There's a de facto engagement center right now in East Somerville in a nonprofit space there. We see it every time we're there. I appreciate folks for stepping up and doing that. We have to do better as a city. We can't just rely on a nonprofit to pick up the slack there. We need spaces that operate as warming centers in the colder months and cooling centers in the hotter months. And the question was about permanent supportive housing. Just as we seem poised to do something about this now, it's under a real threat federally, and it's going to be a real challenge to make it happen. We have to figure out a way to do that with the Medicaid cuts coming and any other financial.
Thank you. I very much agree with everything my colleague just said. You know, when I first moved to Somerville, I lived on Fellsway West, which is right across the street from Boss Park. And as someone who lived literally right across the street from East Somerville in general, I saw people who were unhoused living under the highway, hiding in the corners near my grocery store. And it was incredibly depressing to know that these are folks who often did not feel that they could engage with the city or with the general population because they knew that their very presence would cause people ire and wanted to push them out. We need a public health and public safety focus on this. We need to go to spaces like Chucky Harris Park and actually have real engagement with these individuals. There are many reasons, for example, that someone might not want to sleep in a shelter. There are very legitimate reasons some people do not want to sleep in shelters. The city needs multiple options to help them get off the streets, including permanently affordable housing. What I will not do as mayor is do sweeps. As I mentioned at a previous debate, my colleague had a newsletter on August 1st where he left the door open to doing more sweeps, taking people's property. There was just an article in the Salem Reporter about how that has not been effective nationwide. We need humane supports.
All right, thank you both. Our next question will be asked by Maria Stella. Gracias.
Muy bien. Ustedes están hablando de un ambiente seguro en Somerville. Desafortunadamente, la fuerte presencia de ICE en Somerville y en particular en Somerville ha dificultado el funcionamiento de los pequeños negocios. 3 negocios propiedad de inmigrantes han cerrado en Somerville en los últimos 3 meses. ¿Qué estrategias específicas utilizarán para asegurar la supervivencia de los pequeños negocios propiedad de inmigrantes?
Thank you, Stella. This question is about small local businesses. Heavy ICE presence in Somerville, and in particular East Somerville, has made it more difficult for small businesses to operate. 3 immigrant-owned businesses have closed in East Somerville in the last 3 months. What specific strategies will you use to ensure the survival of small immigrant-owned businesses? And please be mindful of how quickly you're speaking. As a reminder.
Thank you for that question, and it's a really important one. There are many folks in this room who probably remember crime watchers on the streets, all those low signs. We need a robust ICE watch in this city. There's already the network for it, and I know there are probably many folks in this room get those texts and when they hear about ICE in different neighborhoods, but we need people staked out around our businesses to help support them and to make sure that they have a pathway to find sanctuary. ICE comes into our. This is something that I think the mayor's office needs to be at the heart of connecting the different stakeholders, including our nonprofit partners, but also different organizations that are coming from the grassroots, because y'all are on the front lines of these issues in a way that the city is just not. And as the chair of licenses and permits, I've tried to support many different businesses, including immigrant-owned businesses. I helped lead the charge to get the city to do a disparity study so we can figure out how we can get more money into the hands of business owners of color and women. And I think this needs to be two-pronged. We need to make sure that the folks who are here can thrive, and we need to make sure that they're safe and have the supports they need from the city to stay.
Thank you for that question. Yeah, I agree with my colleague on the importance of people being out there standing vigil and making sure that we are on the lookout for ICE. I would encourage people, if you're looking for something, to come out and do that. You'll be very welcome when you do that. I can tell you that from personal experience. It's in a time when we're all looking to say, what can we do? That's a concrete thing you can do. Regarding license and permit, absolutely. That process is difficult even for a native English speaker who knows the system frontwards and backwards. It's still tough. Imagine going through that for the first time and not speaking English as your primary language. We have to do better to make sure that we help folks navigate that. The ICE activity that's happening here in Somerville, it's led to a real drop in foot traffic, and also the business owners and their workers know that threat. We've seen people taken out of businesses here in the summer. If you are looking for how you can help, something concrete you can do, come to East Summer. Spend time here. Have a meal, have a drink, buy something from a shop. These businesses are hurt. Storefronts are increasingly vacant in this part of the city. It's the most fun resistance you can do to what's happening here in Federal is going out and having a good time in the summer. Because managing businesses in your business right now.
All right, thank you both. So this is going to be the last question before the closing remarks. And I'm going to ask it. This one, many elements of the questions came from audience members who submitted their questions in advance, but this one came directly from an audience member. So there are a lot of development plans happening right now that are substantial and will make Somerville increasingly unaffordable. As mayor, what will you do now to plan for the changes to come 5 to 10 years from now so that we don't get the drastic wave of gentrification that we had before the new Green Line stops were open?
Yeah, thank you for that question. Yeah, Somerville for 20 years, and I saw firsthand the impact of those green light stations opening and the displacement that it caused. That's what making sure that we're developing a smart edge could be huge for us. Yeah, as I talked about earlier, that's my favorite development strategy around those green light stations. To make sure that that's what we're going behind. Make sure that we are protecting the national current affordable housing that we see in neighborhoods like East Somerville, my neighborhood, Mayoral, where it's very common to see folks, only in cities because they found one of those units. If we upzone there, we're going to be, like I said before, if we're going to be accelerating displacement, we have to be smarter about where we do this development. Also, in terms of when it comes to development, I'm a big fan of neighborhood councils. Maybe it's time to look into figuring out how to do a neighborhood council in Somerville as well. We've seen that in Union Square, Gilman Square, and now in Davis Square. And they're a crucial component, making sure that development comes in. They're doing right by the community, and their community benefits that actually make that project something that the community feel good about.
Thank you for the question. It's a question I've thought about a lot over the years, and one that frankly I've lived through myself. When I first moved to Somerville, I, funny enough, moved here because I was told, oh, the rent will be cheap. That was great. And then within a year of living here, I was displaced because my rent skyrocketed hundreds of dollars in this exact area. Because of things going on in assembly, etc. We absolutely need to have more neighborhood councils. I consider them our city's defense system from these big developers who come in and try to make drastic changes without the consent of the folks who live here. We absolutely need to be drawing as many concessions from these folks as possible. That can be with uptips, which were used at 299 Broadway, which I also know about, as does everyone on the council. That can be with upzoning, where we need to do it in West Somerville, which is part of which is not near T stations and has, again, the most single family housing. It is the most ripe for upzoning in many ways. Then we need to leverage developers to help solve all these other issues that are going on in our community. The Summer Nova project, for example, is going to have shuttle buses that connect to the Mystics. We need to be pooling. We need to do that.
All right, thank you both. So we're coming to the end of the forum and the closing remarks section. And as part of your closing remarks, let me first, please also tell us what you have most appreciated about working with the other candidate on Somerville City Council over the last few years.
Thank you for having us. This is our second forum here in on this stage, actually. And each and every time it is an honor to be in front of you. Being a city councilor for the last 4 years has been one of the honors of my life. It's allowed me to wake up every single day and know that I can actually have a positive impact on one of my neighbors' lives. And that's something I do not take for granted in the least. I'm running for mayor because I believe that there is more that we have to do in order to keep the community that is here present in this place that we call home. There is more that we need in terms of decisive, urgent, passionate, principled, and pragmatic leadership that I absolutely believe that we can achieve if we combine our collective expertise and passion for Somerville. And if you want to join this campaign and help out, you can go to willieforsomerville.com. I will. Jake and I both ran together in 2021. I got more votes that year. Both ran together in 2023. I got more votes that year. And I will say the thing I appreciate about him is amongst all my colleagues, he's actually one of the the least judgmental. When he says he listens, he actually does. And he listens with, I think, generally an open heart, with kindness. And in politics, that is a very rare trait.
Yeah, thanks for coming out. Thanks for the those who put this on tonight. It's been a real pleasure being here with you. I'll start by talking about what I appreciate about my colleague here. I like Willie, I respect him, I consider him a friend. I've really enjoyed working with Willie on the council. You mentioned the north-south micro transit that we both worked on. I appreciated also the medical debt forgiveness that you brought forward as well. You know, Willie leads with his heart and with his principles, and I would say he's never done me dirty on the council. I appreciate that.
He does always say that.
I was a member for nearly a decade. I know the anxiety being behind all that when I lost my job. We were lucky. We had another city with stories don't always work out. At 27, my wife and I were when our landlord didn't bring in our lease because of the selling problem. I know how it feels to be told you have to go on short notice. And I know this has happened as far as in our community. I've stood with our most vulnerable residents physically at rallies and on policies as the council of large. And I'll continue fighting for you as your next mayor. I'm asking you to come volunteer with our campaign during the meetings. Be part of the program. Thanks.
All right. Thank you both. Let's give one more round of applause for the candidate. Hey. Also a shout out, thank you for our question askers and our candidates forum planning committee. Before we go, I've got a few final announcements and invitations for all of you. First, the questions that we asked the mayoral candidates tonight are also being sent to the at-large city council candidates. We will be sharing their responses via email and on our website by the end of next week. Next thing, on Wednesday, November 5th, from 6 to 8 p.m. in place of our Somerville movement meeting, we will have a vigil in solidarity with tenants on Washington Street who are facing $800 rent hikes, eviction, and terrible conditions, including lead poisoning. Pilar is holding up a flyer. There's going to be interpretation, food, and childcare. Please take a flyer on your way out and register. I think it's being put in the chat on Zoom as well. The location for the vigil will only be sent to people who register. I also want to give a shout out to Gary Rogers, who's here tonight from 22 Sargent Avenue. Gary is still fighting eviction and the over 90% rent hike that his out-of-state landlord tried to give him. Gary has stood strong and stayed in his apartment for 621 days now without, that's without paying the increase. Gary's jury trial is coming up. I think it's December, right? December 8th. So let's give it up for Gary. And finally, we have just a few weeks left to collect signatures for the statewide rent control ballot campaign. So if you are a registered voter, please sign on tonight if you haven't already. We have ballot papers. That's it, everybody. Another round of applause for everyone who made tonight's event possible. Thank you. Have a great night. Oh, Danny's got them. Appreciate it.